Welcome back, everyone. It's me again, Mr. Falah, your host here at English Community. And as always, in each episode, you will be introduced to one of the profs, doctors, teachers, lecturers, students, and even English speakers from different departments and universities in Mosul to discuss a wide range of subjects related to both teachers and students. In this special episode, I have a very known lecturer from Translation Department in College of Arts in Mosul University, Mr. Ali Albaroodi. Welcome, Mr. Ali, and thanks for accepting our invitation to the program.
Thanks for having me here.
Actually, we are honored to have you here, sir.
Thank you.
As usual, Mr. Ali, I'm kindly asking you to give us an introduction about yourself. Who is Mr. Ali Albaroodi? What kind of certificate, student, subject do you teach, sir?
My name is Ali Albaroodi. I got my MA Translation Studies back in 2012. I teach conversation, consecutive interpreting, and recently simultaneous interpreting.
Good. Let's kick this off, Mr. Ali, with the first question, which says, please provide ample information on simultaneous interpreting, offering insights into this specific field.
Well, translation in general is not only a linguistic activity, it's interlinguistic, cross-cultural activity that happens between two languages and cultures.
Yeah.
So it's a very famous and important branch of translation is the oral interpreting, which we start with at-sight interpreting, consecutive, and at the top of the pyramid you can see the simultaneous interpreting. Simultaneous interpreting is one of the most complicated and sophisticated human activities. Like as a humans, as what we are doing now is we are doing the turn-taking strategy when you ask and I answer, and then we exchange questions and answers.
Yes.
So in simultaneous interpreting, it's completely different. Is that you do three things at once. You listen.
At the same time.
You listen to the speech. You process the message. You find the equivalent in the target language, Arabic in our case, and then you produce the message for the target audience. So it's not quite related to the language only. You need to work on too many things. I'm sure we are going to share so many stories today.
Of course, we're going to delve into this kind of information. Good answering, Mr. Ali. How about, could you share recommended practice schedule for students aiming to improve their simultaneous interpreting skills? What should they do to improve themselves?
Yeah. So there is a kind of a scale of difficulty when we teach our students, starting from the sophomore stage with the second stage students. So it starts with something called at sight, and then we move higher in the junior year with consecutive interpreting, and then we reach the senior year and we give simultaneous interpreting. During these 3 years, we do not teach language or consecutive interpreting or simultaneous interpreting only. We rather work on the raw material. First, we work on language development, and then we work on memory. Memory is one of the most essential issues in interpreting. It's about how to store, process, and then restore, and then reproduce the message in the target language. So when they reach the senior year, they feel kind of afraid of this, because if you look at simultaneous interpreting from far away, you see it like too challenging to do. I used to think that simultaneous interpreting is too challenging to do. But if you take things step by step and you make a schedule of development, a schedule of moving from one level into another, you can find development in this complicated and sophisticated activity. So I start with something called shadowing. Shadowing is a strategy not specifically or exclusively related to simultaneous interpreting. Like people use it to improve their accents, their fluency. So in shadowing, for example, they work on creating a kind of harmony or synchronization between their senses, the interpreted senses.
Sure.
When they work on this, they work on synchronization, how to hear and speak at the same time without feeling that it's quite confusing. And then we work on the separation of senses, because when you talk while listening, you should not hear a huge noise around you. So you learn how to control the volume of your voice. So it's just like holding the remote controller and trying to volume up or down your satellite TV channel or your cell phone. So we start working on this for about 4 weeks, from mid-September to November. So during these 6 weeks, we rarely interpret. So all our focus goes to working on memory, how to restore, how to store and restore, how to control your senses, how you synchronize them, how to separate them. And then we start working on these conferences.
To include yourself.
So 6 weeks of theories, 6 weeks on working on our memory, 6 weeks of sharing the stories from real life interpreters. And then we put these students head to head with a speaker so they can start practicing this. For the rest of the year, they practice, and more practice, and practice makes perfect.
Yeah, good. So what you meant, they need to sharpen these skills before they go to simultaneous interpreting, according to the schedule you already mentioned.
It's almost impossible to do simultaneous interpreting
without sharpening
without
this.
this.
Yeah, good. How about, could you delve into common mistakes made by interpreters during their learning process, such as focusing solely on isolated skills? Do you have anything to say about this point?
As for the mistakes, when we listen to student interpreters, we need to take notes on every single aspect they share or they may commit. So when they make a mistake, it's not the end of the world for sure. And even if they make mistakes in an important conference, we all make mistakes. So it's not the end of the world. What we try to do is to analyze. So a student, for example, is going beyond the limit. He's silent for too long. When he falls silent for too long, like the number of sentences which are not interpreted will be too much. And maybe he or she will not be able to store all the information mentioned by the speaker. So when this amount of knowledge accumulates, like it becomes like something too heavy to carry. So at that level, he or she will not be able to restore all the information. When restoring all the information fails, so some drops happen, information drops, like especially when we talk about statistics, about numbers, about names of countries, cities, dates, all these information are important. The other thing that an interpreter should keep in mind, in simultaneous interpreting do not happen in a normal real life situation. It's a conference, and when we say a conference, it means a high-level conference. So international NGOs, governors, presidents. So it's very, very critical that every single word should be carried away. Some people think that when a speaker speaks too fast, they think that they cannot interrupt him because an interpreter works in a completely separate booth from the conference venue. So some people think that it is not possible to interrupt. So in this case, there are two things an interpreter can do. First of all, there is a button in the device which they can press, and that button is going to send a signal or notification to the conference organizer that please speak slower because you are too fast.
You are not following
you are too fast. If that is not accessible or if that is not possible, then we can resort to something called paraphrasing. Paraphrasing means that you do not commit verbatim to every single thing mentioned, but you make a paraphrasing, which is a very risky strategy. Why? Because who says that your paraphrasing or your explanation of the message is as accurate as the speaker was saying? So it's kind of risky, and you cannot have it from all the sides of the compass, as they say, because speakers are not predictable. Because the speakers are not predictable, an interpreter should know what to do before going into the into the conference in which he will interpret. Like, for example, when I give this strategy to my students, I say, do not interpret if you don't have some materials about the topic of the conference. You can ask for the materials yourself, and if the conference is not that critical or serious, they can send you the material to read, to read about, to have a background knowledge about the speakers.
About it, yeah.
So there are many variables that should be put into the interpreter's mind. You should know your speakers, their tone, their intonation. You should know about the topic. You cannot go blindly. That's a huge risk. And the other issue is that you should know your speaker, because some speakers, they speak standard language, which is kind of easier than dialectical language. What if you interpret for the Egyptian president, for example? That is too challenging to do. What if someone speaks the Baghdadi accent, which is kind of difficult for us Muslawis? So all these things are tackled and discussed thoroughly in the class. Now we are in late April, and I cannot tell you how many dialects we interpreted. We interpreted Sudanese, Iraqi, Egyptian. And as for the English part, we usually take British and American English and Asian English, Spanglish sometimes. So
on student, sorry for interrupting, on student level, do you mean? The one who interpreted were students, right?
Yes.
In this kind of conference.
Yes.
Welcome back, our beautiful audience, and we are having in this episode Mr. Ali Albaroodi, and let's go back to the questions. Mr. Ali, can you discuss your background and experience in simultaneous interpreting, practically in academic settings in Mosul University?
That's my favorite piece of cake.
Yeah.
Well, after the liberation from ISIS, like cultural and academic cooperations started happening between our university and many international academic institutions. So these cooperations are fruiting out nowadays. Like many conferences are being held on campus. So when we hear about these activities, we started talking about training the students to participate, and now students are being trained every year to participate in a conference between our university and the University of Dortmund, University of Graz in Austria. So RISI conference is happening this year, sometime in May, and we are now training some students to participate as interpreters. So this is my favorite time of the year, because we will see our beautiful students doing what they were studying. So now we are moving from theory into practice. I studied simultaneous interpreting in 2005, and we couldn't practice it.
In that time, of course, you didn't have these kind of activities.
It was like full of theories, and at the end, you never know. Are we going to simultaneously interpret one day? Are we going to interpret conferences one day? We were not sure about that, and we could not whisper about that. Nowadays, it's happening on campus, off campus, everywhere. So it's a bless.
Yeah,
it's a true bless.
These kind of activities, did you hold them, for example, did you practice it on the internet, right? On a specific application, or in person, for example, face-to-face?
In the Grand Theater Hall.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it happens on campus.
Good. So this is a good, actually, as you said, a good opportunity for students to practice their simultaneous interpreting. Moving on to the next question, which is, which teaching methods or approach do you find most effective or guiding students in simultaneous interpreting, sir?
Well, for me, a teaching method is not a sacred text. It's not a sacred book. So it depends on the situation. Like there is no fixed method of teaching. Like a certain method may fail. So you need to move to plan B and a plan C and a plan Z maybe. For me, I use the communicative one and I use the student-centered. Like I try to speak as less as possible and give the floor to the students. At some level, we follow the peer review. Peer review is that we team up, we have a team leader, we have interpreters, and we have someone whose job is to evaluate. So learning to evaluate is not an easy task, because when we hear the word evaluation or criticism, all what we think about is the mistakes, the errors that the interpreter or any person committed. But the most difficult part of a criticism or evaluation is how to say that this is good. And you don't just say this is good. No, you give a justification, you give like a reason. So the peer review makes the students busier in a class, because if we give the floor to one student only to interpret, and the rest may not be quite interested, and so a buzzing class is a successful class.
Yeah, good, for sure, for sure. Moving on to the next one, which is, in your opinion, what are the essential skills students need to excel as simultaneous interpreters? I think we spoke about this point, but I need to go deeper in it. What are, for example, is there anything else that the simultaneous interpreter should have to become a successful one, sir?
Well, I heard one of the most famous Arab interpreters saying that an interpreter should be highly educated. What we mean by highly educated is not the number of diplomas that he has, but he must keep up with the daily updates of the topics that he or she may be interpreting.
So continuously learning, he's not stopping.
Yeah, so it's not learning the interpreting or the language only, but staying updated. He works for the United Nations, and the topics that are discussed inside the corridors of the United Nations are usually related to humanitarian, security, wars, famines. So he says that he reads 3 newspapers a day.
Really?
Yeah. Good. So that's what we mean by highly educated, like knowing something about everything and everything about something, which is impossible to do, but try to be as much knowledgeable as possible.
He's always on update. Yeah.
He must be a very quick respondent. Okay. Inference making is a very, very important strategy. Like, you don't just stay on the surface of the language only. You should delve deep into the nuances, into the intentions, into the cultural context of the language. A simultaneous interpreter should have a clear voice. He should know how to use his voice, whether it is too high or too low. Sometimes you need to activate the energy saving mode if you think that you don't have a backup. Yeah. So these are the basic ones, like added to the very ABCs of interpreting.
Okay. Another question says, actually, I just thought about it, Mr. Ali. What are the chances for simultaneous interpreters here in, for example, specific in our city, Mosul, or in Iraq? What are the chances to activate, for example, or to practice this field here? Do you think the student, the one are graduating from your department, of course, from translation department, is he going to find, for example, kind of a job maybe in some companies maybe, or even worked with the education institutions or kind of things?
Well, I don't want to draw a very pinky image about the simultaneous interpreting reality in Mosul. We are still at the beginning. Yeah. Now there are some companies who are supplying.
Of course, I'm working here.
Yeah, supplying events with the logistics, with the devices. We are still at the beginning in Mosul. We are still at the beginning, but it's a very promising step. I keep receiving knocks on my door from many graduates who are saying that they are doing it. But are they doing it, for example, 10 times a month? No, it's very, very rare in Mosul. And
it depends on the conference, as you said previously, and kind of these activities.
Yeah, I think we are still at the beginning, but I think with the safe environment we are living in nowadays, things are promising in the near future.
Hopefully in the future they are going to have, inshallah, more chances, of course, for sure. Mr. Ali, could you elaborate on any research or projects you have undertaken in simultaneous interpreting and how they inform your teaching?
Well, I don't give too much theorizing. Too many theories make the mind very, very numb.
Yeah.
Like for me, the most important part in my class, when we discuss mistakes, we don't discuss the mistakes of these students only. We bring real life examples from world famous interpreters and interpreters and people working in this field. And the other thing is that if you bring a simultaneous interpreter into the table and you discuss things with him or her, that gives the student more courage to be an interpreter. Like, because some people are still thinking that it's too difficult to do. So in that case, when we combine all these factors leading to become an interpreter, they help them develop.
Good. So how about Mr. Ali? The next question which says, what methods do you use to assess students' progress, and proficiency in simultaneous interpreting? And what criteria, let's say, do you employ for evaluation?
We have delivery, which we talked about a couple of minutes ago. We have the accuracy. We usually draw like a kind of rubric with many variables through which you assess the student, the continuation of the message, the time gap that a student waits for the message to arrive, and the time spent in which like the student processes the information and then he delivers it. So all these must be studied very, very thoroughly. Like, for example, when at the beginning of the year we give like 2 to 2.5 minutes only to the student, but by the end of the year we give 5 or 7 minutes. So the assessment is based on how much time did you spend with them, how much time did they interpret. I'm not talking about the class time only, but I keep asking the students, in order to be a successful interpreter, you should make interpreting a daily habit. Even if you don't have a job, like if you keep developing this skill, you'll be much better in 2 months, after 6 months, after 2 years.
Creating atmosphere.
Yeah. So 10 minutes a day of a practice, that will make you much better. As for the assessment, like delivery and accuracy, like this dichotomy works together to produce a very high caliber interpreter. And it also depends on the difficulty of the speech that we get. Like most of the speeches I bring to the students are either from regional conferences or from the United Nations. And by the end of the year, we filmed the students a couple of minutes ago.
Told me about it before we filmed this.
Yeah, doing it. She was interpreting for Queen Rania, and you saw that she was so fluent, a clear language, clear delivery, a very competent performance, as if she was
doing this for ages. Maybe not the first. Exactly. Moving on to the next question, Mr. Ali. If you have the chance to write a book in simultaneous interpreting or in interpreting in general, what the title of that book should be, and what are the ideas or skills you are going to address in that specific book, sir?
Well, first of all, I don't want it to be a big book, but I want it to be a book addressed to the students of translation. I will not theorize a lot, but I will make a survey of all the students who succeeded in it, with their portraits, with some of their performances, and how they are doing now, just to prove that simultaneous interpreting is very possible to do.
Okay. Last question, sir. What's your advice, Mr. Ali, for simultaneous interpreters? And as I said, interpreters in general, what's your advice, your final insights about this specific field, sir?
Well, they say like practice makes perfect, and it's not only practice. You need to work on the basic English skills for the rest of your life, to be more educated in every single field of life. As they say, know something about everything and everything about something.
Yes.
And my message to some students was very, very clear a couple of weeks ago. You need to pass simultaneous interpreting so you can graduate. If you cannot do simultaneous interpreting, or if you don't work in the field of interpreting, that does not mean that you failed. There are many fields in life. I was not an interpreter until 2019, and when I started doing it, that was like now it is my favorite activity, to be honest. So there are many fields in life. If you don't feel like becoming a simultaneous interpreter, please, that's not the end of the world.
Redirect,
that's not
of course,
that's not the end of your career. There are many
other
fields.
There are other branches.
And the other thing that I'm so happy to see nowadays on our campus is that graduates are coming back here for a reason. Like you, Mr. Falah, you are coming here to have your own show, which is very promising. We have Yasser coming back here as a photographer. And most importantly, that students are finding a space to practice what they are learning. Students of simultaneous interpreting are practicing it in the Grand Theatre Hall, in international conference with European and American universities. And we have here the students of media department learning how to use a camera, how to set up and how to film and how to edit and how to hold press conferences. This is a
promising thing.
This is the silver shining of all what happened in Mosul.
So graduating is not the end of course, the journey. As you said, we are coming back and we are trying to create the atmosphere for
graduation is just the beginning.
It's the beginning of the end, kind of. Well, thank you, Mr. Ali, and for our beautiful audience. Thanks for attending the episode to the end of it. And of course, we are going to see you in upcoming episode with other teachers and students. In this episode, I had Mr. Ali Albaroodi. Thank you, Mr. Ali, for joining us. And we are, of course, going to have you, inshallah, in the near future, inshallah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ali.
Enjoyed it.
See you, inshallah, in the next one. Assalamu alaikum.